Okay, so this video is coming out about 2.5 weeks late. I meant to do it earlier. I didn't get the chance to do it earlier, so I'm doing it now. This is either going to get tacked onto my video for completing Broken Arrow, the mission, without using a bug. I have an idea on how to do that, but more than likely it's going to be its own standalone video, possibly coming out this Saturday if I can manage it. So, this is also the second time I'm actually doing this video, because the first time around, the video came in at almost 2 hours long, and that's a little bit much even for me. So, update 1.010. They have a video. Very good. I'm not going to watch the video. It's not my video, but they do have a video. They also have made steps to solve basically people leaving. They added a surrender option. I'm kind of surprised they don't just introduce slaughter rules where the match just ends early if one team really gets their head kicked in towards the start, but okay. And then they're introducing a new anti-cheat system. If I'm going to be entirely honest, the anti-cheat, the developers would have had a lot fewer problems with cheaters if they had used one of the off-the-shelf anti-cheat systems instead of trying to make their own. The problem is that a lot of people seem to think that anti-cheat systems are an invasion of privacy. Now, this is going to be a controversial opinion, but personally, I think that when you get on the internet, much like when you leave your house, you forfeit some of your privacy. So, honestly, it doesn't matter which kind of anti-cheat system they used or the method that the anti-cheat used. Someone would have pitched a fit about it that no one wanted to deal with. Again, they have another little primer here about what we have to expect. And we have changelog with various different features, surrender functions, penalties for deserters. I think these times might be a little bit lenient. After, like, okay, the first time I can kind of understand that as a sort of warning. These other ones might be a little bit lenient, but they can change that easily enough on their end. So, other new features about laser designation, useful. I don't think I've laser designated much in this game. The only two times I've used laser designator off the top of my head was firstly lasing the enemy officer in We Own the Night, so I can drop 4 tactical ballistic missiles on his head. Because killing one guy with 4 prisms is hilarious overkill. And then lasing a hardened aircraft shelter in Airbase Heist so I could bomb it with an F-35. And new models for the BMD-4. I honestly think that should be the BMD-4M. The BTR MDM and the Cornet D1. You can drag and drop when unloading units. The position where you press the button is where the troops will be unloaded, and the position where you release the click will be where the unloaded troops will go after being unloaded. If this position is a building, they will automatically enter it. I think I understand what they mean here. But if you want to unload troops into a building, why not just... I mean, you can automatically do that. Unless you wanted to put the transport vehicle in a certain orientation compared to the building. And then they've got a bunch of general fixes and improvements. So, I'm not going to go into this too much. Mainly what I'm here for is the different balance changes. I have looked at the balance changes. I mean, this update's come out about 2.5 weeks ago now, so I've already looked through it. I've already looked through it. I don't, and the balance isn't really what I'm here for. The balance is what I'm here for. These general fixes are not, but they are nice. On balance, there are three levels of balance: the balance between nations, the balance between specializations within a nation, and the balance between units within a specialization. So, yeah. I mean, anyone watching this can read this if they like. Shifted balance in favor of Russia. Previous balance ratio is almost 54%. They do note here that it is also important to observe that above 2,000 ELO, which, for anyone not knowing, ELO is basically it's like a skill measure. That's the idea of it. The higher the ELO, the better the player is. The faction balance is much better and very close to 50-50, but that only concerns the top 5% of players. The main reason for that is the difference in design between the two factions. Russia is designed as a mainly ground-based power with masses of universal units that are pretty straightforward to use, while the USA is designed as a more air-based power with very powerful but more specialized units. All these specialists correctly used and coordinated are very powerful, but if used wrongly, they perform very badly. Basically, long story short, the US has a higher skill floor than Russia does. But at the same time, it also has a very high skill ceiling, which Russia also kind of does. Aircraft in this game are not especially easy to use, but if you use them properly, they can be very, very powerful. New balance aims to reestablish a better balance between the two nations for a majority of the players. We're trying to maintain a good balance at high level. And then they do something which I really, really liked. To do so, we improve the interoperability of the different US specializations by moving some units from one specialization to another, and we change the seating capacity of some vehicles to facilitate the mixing of infantry units and transports between specializations. I really, really like this. While doing so, we continue our efforts to balance the interest of the specializations within the factions and the units within the specialization by targeting over or underperforming units. And now we get to the balance changes. So first we have the Ka-32 on the Tu-22M3, which is the only thing that can carry the Ka-32. And now the missile will loft to a high altitude before diving on its target, like in reality. So does that mean that the missile lofts, flies relatively high, and then enters a relatively steep dive? Or does it sort of go up and then enter a relatively shallow dive almost right away? Air defense units use their high altitude optics and weapons range to intercept it. I think they're supposed to have a can somewhere in here. But the KH-32 is an anti-ship missile, a big one at that, actually. And mind you, this thing was designed to destroy 80, 90, 110,000 ton nuclear-powered supercarriers, so it's big. Some anti-ship, or most anti-ship missiles, fly very, very, very low. It's called sea skimming. I assume that's what their flight path was before, but I never really paid much attention to it. Actually, I don't think I've seen it. I don't play multiplayer, and I know it's common in multiplayer. And the only time it appears in single player is when the Colonel gives them to you at the end of Road to Fiddler Green, so you can try and destroy the ships. Okay, 29. Aim time increased 1 to 3 seconds to prevent instant blind fire against SAM sites engaging the plane carrying them. We're able to easily overwhelm the amount of air defense, making the use a low-cost, high-reward solution. And then they were slightly reducing the aim time on the KB-1500. It's added for smart bombs to prevent them from sniping tanks on the move. And then this is interesting. Vehicles with reloadable short-range AA missiles reload time reduced. all of these systems, we're talking about the sort of adapted man-pads, fire and forget IR-guided missiles here. So nothing like Tor or so nothing like Tor, Tunguska, any version of the Pantsir or the MML. This will slightly increase the performance of the low-range SHORAD systems. That might be a bit of a, not oxymoron, but kind of redundant. SHORAD stands for Short Range Air Defense. It's a U.S. Army designation. The alternative is HIMAD, High to Medium Range Air Defense, which is your big, quote-unquote, SAM systems like Patriot or S-300. And help them compete with their top-tier units. Since the U.S. doesn't have SHORAD available, big, quote-unquote, SHORAD, and the U.S. does. It's called the MML. There's only one. This will slightly improve their maximal SHORAD efficiency. And air defense with a single Stinger pod versus double Stinger pods. And they've also buffed the heat round on Abrams. You have the regular heat shell. Heat stands for high explosive anti-tank. It's basically a shaped charge. They've increased the pen. And then the high explosive anti-tank dual purpose has its damage slightly increased. Now, what's worth noting is they have not increased the pen on the dual purpose shell. Versus the pen's still 400, but the damage has gone slightly up. Now, the reason why they've done this is that the Abrams experienced significant difficulties in combat against light vehicles with ATGMs, as it required 3 shells to kill them, losing in open combat. This change means that any vehicle with 16 HP and 200 armor or less will be destroyed in 2 hits by those shells instead of 3. Now, the dual-purpose shell is intended to be used, well, dual purpose in military parlance means that you can use it against infantry or vehicles. Alternatively, it means like a dual-purpose gun system could be used against a surface target or air target, but that's beyond the point. So, I'm kind of curious. Presumably, they did not want the M30A1 to overperform, which is why they didn't give it the extra pen. But I wonder how much it would, because I don't think it would overperform that much, given the extra pen. I don't know. I don't think it would have overperformed. I would have just given both shells the 600 millimeter pen, and then given the DP the extra point of damage. Refunding ballistic cruise missile launchers after shooting them will now make them unavailable for twice longer than resupplying them in the field. Possibility refund units was always thought as a way for players to change up their strategy during a match, not as an alternative to resupplying them in the field. That's fair. And this is one of the changes that I don't particularly like. They took the PAC-2 Patriot and they moved it from the Armor Brigade to the USMC specialization. And they took the PAC-3 Patriot and they moved it from Stryker to the Armor Brigade. Having both the PAC-3 and PAC-3 MSC Patriots in the Stryker specialization made them redundant. By splitting the long-range AA capability between more U.S. specializations, we make the faction easier to play. I don't know why they don't just use Nation. Without good team coordination, the least performant PAC, Patriot, that should probably just be Patriot, was given to the armored spec in order to promote building other unit combinations. Now, this is going to kind of tie into another one of the changes that I don't like that we'll get to later. But I understand what they've done, because the different Patriot variants basically... The different Patriot variants basically work... The different Patriot variants basically work like this. The PAC-2 can do 21 damage. This, alongside the S-300 V4 And the S300 PM also do more than 20 damage. And that's pertinent because a fixed-wing fighter-sized aircraft have 20 health, meaning that the PAC-2 and the two S300s can one-shot those aircraft. The other PAC variants, and most other aircraft or most other systems in general, cannot. However, instead of moving the PAC-3 to the Marine Corps specialization, I think it would have been better if they took the PAC-3 MSC, moved it to Armor Brigade, and moved the PAC-2 to Striker Cav. Because the different Patriot variants basically do different things. The PAC-2 is a longer range system that is more useful against fixed-wing aircraft. PAC-3 is much shorter ranged, but you have a lot more missiles. The missiles don't hit as hard, the system is shorter ranged, but you have 4 times as many of them. This system is much better suited for dealing with things like cruise and ballistic missile spam than the PAC-2 is. The only platform in the game that can overwhelm PAC-3 is a B-1B Lancer with JASSMs and a B-52 fully loaded with ALCMs. The B-2 with JASSMs has 16 missiles, the same as the PAC-3, but nothing else comes close. And then the PAC-3 MSC is kind of like, it's sort of like a bridge between the two. It's longer range than the PAC-3, but shorter than the PAC-3 MSC. You have more missiles than the PAC, or not. It's longer range than the PAC-3, but shorter than the PAC-2. You have more missiles than the PAC-2, but less than the PAC-3. I kind of wish the damage was 19 instead of just 16. But this is basically a middle ground between the two of them. So what I think they should have done was taken the MSC, moved it to Armored, and then had the PAC-3 and the PAC-2 in Striker Cav. And another reason why I think this is because of what it does to the Marine Corps specialization. The Marines, the whole idea behind the Marines is that they were sort of a jack-of-all-trades assault force, at least from my understanding. The problem is that to fit this idea, they didn't really have a deep support tab. One of the flaws with the specialization was they didn't have any big support assets. And you change that when you give them the PAC-2, because you give them a big support asset. And so you kind of change slightly, granted it's not by too much, but you kind of change slightly what the Marine Corps does. Or can do by giving them the PAC-2. And besides, you're giving the Marine Corps an Army air defense system, which the Marine Corps doesn't use in reality. I can kind of understand why they did it, to give the Marine Corps some and a radar-based air defense system, but I don't know. And then they made this change, which I kind of like. The Viper rocket pod loadout change. The APKWS now come in 7 pods, and the non-APKWS come in 19 pods. The Venom now gets bigger 19-shot rocket pods, which I wanted, and it's slightly more expensive. And then they've added 5-inch Zuni rockets to the Super Cobra. They've also given the Venom the GAU-21. APKWS guided rockets are mostly seen in the small 7-tube rocket pod rather than the big 19-tube pods. Following this real-life observation, that is true, allows us to make the choice between APKWS and Hydra options more meaningful in the game. We have also added a few more options where possible. So, that's nice and all. But if I'm going to be entirely honest, and I'm not trying to complain or gripe, but I kind of wish we just had the option for 2 7-tube Hydra pods, 2 7-tube APKWS pods, and then 2 19-tube Hydra pods, maybe 2 19-tube APKWS pods. And then we also get the GAU-21, which is nice. And they've also given the Super Cobra Zunis, which I like. And the reason why I like that they've done this, because, well, firstly, this is closer to things like the Russian S-13 rockets, whereas the Hydras are closer to the Russian S-8s. But the reason why I like the Zunis is because it actually gives the aircraft a reason to exist. Because if I'm going to be entirely honest, why would you take the Super Cobra over basically anything else? Even a bog standard Apache, just loaded with rockets. It doesn't really look good, because the Apache, if you compare these two, loaded with full Hydras, the Apache's 20 points more expensive, yes. The Apache can also see farther. It's tougher. It has more health. It has better ECM, and arguably, it has a better gun. So, the only thing the Super Cobra has is that it's 20 points cheaper. It's also slightly faster than the Apache, I believe. Yes. But with the Zuni rockets, which are much larger, you actually give the Super Cobras, for lack of a better term, a reason to exist. The alternative would be going and grabbing something like the Sidewinders, if you wanted, which, I guess. Or the Sidearms. So it kind of has a reason to exist in that respect, but you can still also get those on the Viper. And it's worth noting that you can bring both either 4 Super Cobras or 4 Vipers when you make a deck, so it's not like you can't have as many Vipers as you can Super Cobras. So I like the fact that they gave the Zunis to the Super Cobra, because it gives the Super Cobra a reason to exist now. But at the same time, I kind of wish you could mount them on the Viper, because you could have 4 rocket pods plus the wingtip mounted missiles, but that would just render the Super Cobra obsolete again. They also made some changes to helicopters. The Guardian is now moved to airborne, which it does make more sense, because the AH-64E is just an upgraded version of the AH-64D. It's not really a special forces version of the Apache. The MH-60 DAP now has heavier weapons that it can carry on the outer pylons, which is very good. I like. The Guardian 19-shot Hydropods have been replaced with 8 daggers. The Apache and the Longbow 19-shot APKWS pods have been replaced with 7-shot pods. And the Apache and the regular D Apache now has an asymmetric loadout. The presence of the best AH-64 helicopter in the Special Forces specialization didn't leave anything outstanding in the airborne spec. I would disagree, but we'll get on to that. The Special Forces may have good alternatives, and the DAP anti-tank capability have many good alternatives, and the DAP anti-tank capability was reinforced in compensation. Grouping 3 AH-64s into the same specialization made them more redundant, so we've added some unique customizations. So, firstly, what they're talking about is you now have an asymmetric loadout. And granted, it can be kind of cheap, but they've given it this fuel tank, and I think that's kind of redundant. Because well, the problem I have is that the fuel tank doesn't do anything for the aircraft. If you had given us the option of maybe taking a Hydropod on one side and the Hellfires on the other, that could be more interesting. But the fuel tank does nothing. Also, if I'm not mistaken, I believe the Apaches can actually mount gun pods to their wing pylons, which could be potentially interesting. Possibly the idea of an Apache rolling in with what is effectively 3 M230s could be kind of fun. But I don't know. But I would argue against them saying that the didn't leave anything outstanding in the airborne spec, because you had the longbow with the L Hellfire, which is fire and forget. Well, it's not fire and forget, it's terminal guidance. It's still called fire and forget missiles in here because during the November beta they were fire and forget, and they were hilariously broken, from my understanding. And then you have the E, which also has which also has fire and forget ATGMs, or not fire and forget. They also have terminal guidance ATGMs with a slightly longer range. Honestly, although the only difference between the JAGM and the L Hellfire is that they have a slightly longer range. So, and the price point between the two is not much. There's honestly very little between the two that that differentiates them. Anyway, I digress. You also have an option here for daggers. And then we have SOCOM, specifically the DAP. And they've given Hellfires, the option of Hellfires on the outer pylons, along with 16 of these. If I'm going to be entirely honest, I kind of wish they'd just give us 19-shot pods that you can mount, maybe for 30 points on the outside pylons. That'd be nice. Also, I was kind of under the impression that you can mount a 7-shot Hydropod on the launch rails for Hellfire launcher, like these dagger pods are mounted. I'm not sure if that's something you can do. I think it is, but I might be wrong. I wouldn't be surprised if I am. Anyway, I digress. The thing that I want to see though with the DAP is the ability to customize each one of the inner pylons individually. So, like on one pylon, I can take an M230, but on the other pylon, I can take some Hellfires. I think that would be better. And the reason why I say that is because if you do that, then it turns the system basically into a mini attack helicopter, or a relatively lightly armored attack helicopter. Also, as an aside, I kind of wish we had an option of all the SOCOM helicopters having the GAU-19B as a door gun. This thing, the 50 caliber minigun. Anyway, and then this is something I really like. The DAP can now carry 8 has a troop carrying capacity of 8. The Black Hawk now has a troop carrying capacity of 13. The Silent Hawk has a troop carrying capacity of 14, which means they can carry Raiders. The Black Hawk can now carry a squad of Marines. The DAP can now carry up to a CAT team. Not airborne, though. The Venom can now carry 9 guys, which includes a Ranger squad, troopers, or airborne. The ISV can now carry 9 guys. The MTV can carry 18. MTVR. They've upped this. They've also upped the number of guys in airborne squad to 9. and they've upped the price slightly. This is only for the base airborne. The upgraded airborne price is still 85. And they've upped the weapon squad size equally. Which I think's kind of nice. I kind of want them... I kind of wish the DAP could just go up to 9. But I don't really want to nitpick. These new values reinforce the interoperability of specializations. For instance, the Blackhawk can carry a squad of Marines, the ISV and the Venom can carry a squad of Rangers or Troopers. This should make US decks easier to build and to play. Thank you. I am so glad they have done this. The only change that I want them to make is to make the ACV is to up its carrying capacity to 14 guys. So if I want to bring Raiders, I don't need to bring an AAVP. Along those lines, though, I kind of wish they would do something similar with the Russians. Because all the Russian specializations, except for VDV, have squad sizes that are either 8 or 7. And so I just kind of wish they would up all the squad sizes to 8. And for any of the vehicles, because the vehicles can carry 8, or they can carry 7. Well, that's 8. Where is the... There it is. That's what I'm looking for. Or they can carry 7. Except for the BMP one. That can carry 8. Just make everything carry 8. And just up all the main squad sizes to 8. That's kind of something I'd wish they would do to make it... to increase the synergy, for lack of a better term, on the Russian side. Up, and for the sake of this thing, up it to 16. So you can still pile in 2 guys. Or 2 squads. Ranger standoff, rifle changed to the M4A1 URG. So basically, they up the damage. This unit suffers from redundancy with the airborne squads and other special forces units. In combination with more transport compatibility, this change should make them more appealing. If I'm going to be entirely honest, if you want to make Rangers more appealing, you're going to have to deal with the range issue. Because, yeah, the guns do more damage now, but the reason why people want to take these guys over these guys is because these guys have 50% more range, and their guns are still pretty decent. So... and then, they're slightly increasing the, reload times on some missiles. Particularly the Cornet T and the... missile launchers can reload while guiding their missiles since they are not wire-guided. This ability, combined with the fast reload speed, meant that the next missile was sometimes ready to fire before the impact of the previous. Increasing the reload time creates an opening that can be exploited to engage them with guns. Atatka missiles fired on the move from vehicles, aim time increased. Fired on the move from vehicles, the aim time has been increased by 1 second. BRM3K. That's the recon in... Yeah, this thing has the attackers. Oh, it does. Okay. Basically, the reason why is because these things can fire on the move. But other systems can... But other versions of the Atatka cannot. Missile aim time is low to compensate for the need to stop, and flight time that is higher than a shell. What is the flight time on this thing? Fast. I believe that is measured in meters per second, so that would be fast. In their case, there's no need to stop, so the reduced aim time is less justified. They must still maintain a direct line of sight, so the aim time remains inferior. I think they mean superior to a Javelin. So, 2 or 3 seconds. Meanwhile, if we were to go over to armored, I need a vehicle-mounted version for proper comparison. Where is there's the AMPV. The AMPV with Javelin is like 3 or 4 seconds, because Javelin is terminal guided, so you do not need to maintain line of sight all the way until impact. The BMP-3M now has the option for additional smoke has been removed, and the BMP-3F, the jammer upgrade has been slightly reduced, and the option for additional smoke removed. The presence of double smoke on top of the jammer and the 400mm heat armor makes the BMP-3M too resilient for its price. Instead of increasing the price, we have removed the double smoke. Okay, so it's kind of like in one of the previous videos where I said that if they wanted to make a vehicle less frequent, they would increase the price instead of making it worse. But if they wanted to make people use it less, they or if they wanted to nerf it, they would remove something and not just adjust the price. So this is kind of an example of that. The BT-3F and the basic naval infantry. These two units form the backbone of coastal troops. BT-3F can carry any combination of 2 7-man squads. And the 400mm armor upgrade guarantees the survival of 2 tank shots. I have no idea how to pronounce that, so I'm just going to call them naval infantry, is an excellent all-arounder able to deal with most infantry and armored targets. A slight price nerf was required to put them in line with other infantry options. And then we have new models for the BMD-4. I honestly think this should be BMD-4M, because the BMD-4 isn't produced anymore. The BTR MDM and the Coronet D1. Up armored version now has increased heat protection, slight hit points, price upgrade, or price increase. Coronet D1, frontal armor's increased. BTR MDM. And, hang on. These models were rather old and didn't propose much in terms of customization. The reveal of a new armor kit during this year's Moscow Victor Day Parade, which happened on May 9th, was the occasion to upgrade these models and include the new armor. It's a welcome addition to help small VDV squads and their light vehicles to better hold their ground. Note that the additional armor removes the airdrop ability, so that should be fairly common. Not common, but understandable. So, yeah, it's BMD-4M in-game. And then you do have an armor package. So, although that's not going to stop a top attack like a Javelin. Then again, a Cope Cage won't stop it either, so I guess it's kind of pointless. Have an armor package here, which is kind of cute, I guess. It doesn't it doesn't even cover half the vehicle's front. And then you have, no, it's this thing. And so they actually did increase the armor. Huh. Without the armor package, I mean. The Sheridan is gaining additional smoke charge, as is the Sprut. These two vehicles with low resilience are rather underperforming. The Sprut will suffer from the Abrams heat shell buff, so the smoke will help them survive longer. Which I think is nice, if I'm going to be honest, because this thing is basically an assault gun. You can kind of use it like a tank destroyer / anti-tank vehicle, particularly if you upgrade it, but it is largely an assault gun. And it's not very durable, all things considered. And the Sheridan is kind of in the same problem. Players treat it like an assault gun rather than a tank. At least from my understanding, a lot of people use it like a mini version of the M728 because it has a very big HE shell. But neither of them are very heavily armored, so extra smoke would be useful. Flyer GMV resilience increased. So they buffed the hit points and then they've slightly reduced the cost of the M230. This should make it an interesting alternative to the faster RSOV. I guess it's kind of nice. BMP-2 without Conkers. BMP-2 is regularly observed without ATGMs in reality. In comparison to the BMP-1AM, the BMP-2 offers a better 2A42 autocannon and a higher rate of fire, but a lower troop carrying popularity. Hang on, the AM. The BMP 1AM already has a 2A42. Yeah. It has a 2A72. Hang on. Aim time, reload time. I believe it's the same. 33, 34, 50. In reality, the 2A72 is a sort of modified, for lack of a better term, version of the 2A42. It has a slightly lower rate of fire, but uses fewer moving parts. Although the game doesn't seem to have any... There isn't anything to determine rate of fire here, I don't think. Although I'd like to point out that the BMP-2 carries more ammunition. The Striker SPH now has an option for cluster, and it's more accurate. The low damage and blast radius of 105 round makes it pretty bad. More accuracy can compensate. I have an idea for something that I kind of want to see with this, but I'm gonna save that for a separate video that I want to make at some point, speculating about how you can stuff you can add to different specializations, like different units. The battleship now, the armor's been increased to match armored Hemet. It's not a very popular unit, but armor will not do any harm, and it removes the discrepancy. You should try it with triple grenade launchers as a fire support vehicle. I'm going to assume nobody is using this because they're actually giving us advice on how to try it out. To be fair, if you had a battleship... Where's the battleship? There's the battleship. If you had this, and you gave us the option of taking the TOW-2B for, say, I don't know, instead of 20 points, maybe 30 points for the TOW-2B, it might be an interesting little tank destroyer. But that's just me. Fixed vehicles missing laser range increase announced in patch 1.09. Some vehicles laser abilities were missed last time. The idea behind the longer designation range is that vehicles cannot sneak as much as infantry, so they require to be able to laze from a safe distance of anti-tank missiles. In other words, if I'm understanding this right, vehicles aren't as stealthy as infantry, so being able to laze things from farther would probably be good. And the same logic applies to helicopters. The Hawkeye MWS now has a smoke round customization. When combined with SOCOM, the airborne spec only has the Brutus as an option to lay smoke. Adding this option for the Hawkeye frees the Brutus for other tasks, like, you know, blowing stuff up with 155 HE or cluster. The LAVM, that's the 82mm mortar version, now has a 50-50 choice with smoke. The Dragonfire has 3 more HE rounds and 3 less smoke rounds. And the Diva, which is the basic 82mm mortar on the MTLB, not the 2B9, has its HE smoke loadout changed similar to the LAVM. Small caliber mortars are not very popular because they're low damage, but are perfect to lay smoke barrages. We have reinforced this aspect. That's true, I suppose, but 120mm mortars also have a slightly longer range. And at the same time, like, if I wanted something that can lay smoke, this thing comes with smoke. And a bunch of artillery systems actually come with smoke. So, not counting artillery systems that to only have one round option, you've also got the A7 Paladin and the A6 Paladin. Even if you go with the M1299, you still have the A6 Paladin, which can lay smoke. And I think Russia's the same basic setup. Koalitzia gets smoke. Mosta gets smoke. This thing gets smoke, but it's also a longer ranged. This thing gets smoke as an option, but that's only a single option. This thing gets smoke. This thing gets smoke. This thing gets smoke. This thing does not get smoke. Although you can go with a multi-purpose. This thing does not get smoke. This thing does not get smoke. Okay, it doesn't get smoked there either. This thing does get smoke. So. And then this is another one of the specializations, or the changes I'm a little bit iffy about. They have moved 250 points in the Striker Cav specialization from the support category to infantry. This will help the airborne striker combination without impacting much of the other combinations. Firstly, I don't think so. And the reason why is because if you bring SOCOM, then that's 2,500 points in infantry, which is a lot. But combining this with airborne, you have slightly more points in infantry and slightly less points in support. I don't really see... I don't really see the benefit. At least not too much. And if I'm going to be honest, I'm not particularly a fan of it because it messes with what Striker Cav does. Which is, you have a lot of support to support your relatively light infantry. You don't have anything like tanks. So you have a big, or rather a deep support toolbox to support your light infantry. So, I'm not saying that moving the points, that adding more points to infantry was a bad idea. The specialization is generally built around having infantry, around having good infantry. The problem is that you took it from support. If you took it from maybe aircraft, brought that down to 1750, or to just 750, that would make more sense to me, at least. With a increase all 7.62mm miniguns range to 700 meters and the damage to 0.9, the area of effect removed. They were configured to do not so much damage compared to machine guns, but with an area of effect. This was unclear for the players, and the UI was displaying the damage as cluster. I'd kind of argue against this for a point I'm going to mention in a second. As a rule of thumb, consider that a minigun has the power of 2 machine guns. So, there it is. So basically, instead of having an area of effect now, which it has a blast radius. This thing has a blast radius, so it has an area of effect. And I'm assuming cluster means that there's no damage fall off. It just does all the damage within the area of effect. But now it's basically like a better version of a 240 with a slightly longer range and slightly more damage. I assume they're getting the longer range because basically accuracy through volume allows you to accurately, quote unquote, hit things at longer distances. What am I doing? right? Egg. I'll also note that they've done this with some Russian helicopters. Yeah, they've done this with some Russian helicopters as well. All 7.62mm miniguns. But they haven't done it with 12.7mm miniguns. So, either here or here. So, yeah. I believe next update we're going to see a similar change made, but with the 12.7mm miniguns. And I'm kind of curious what that change is going to look like. Are they going to be 900 meter range? Maybe doing 1.25 damage? Compared to a standard 50 cals. 800... Where is it? There it is. 801 damage. So maybe 900 meters or even 1,000 meters and 1.25 to 1.5 damage. That's what I'd estimate. And for that matter, if I go over to something like this, you can see that it's not exclusive to helicopters. You also have it for ground vehicles equipped with miniguns. So, and then they're nerfing the toss yet again. We want players to be more thoughtful about when they use the toss. This is a powerful unit that can clean up an entire area of from enemy infantry. It should not happen every 3 minutes. I kind of agree with that. To be fair, the toss is very, very, very powerful. And this is this is another change that I don't particularly like. The EX option to carry harms on the outer pylons has been added. The centerline and fuselage weaponry merge into a single customization category. This change should not impact much the combination of airborne with Striker or USMC, which already possess good sea platforms, the Prowler and the F-16CJ. But this will help create more anonymous airborne SOCOM and airborne armored battle groups. The weapon merger is done to better manage the overall price of the plane. I will admit, the EX could get a little bit expensive, but if I'm going to be honest, I think they're overlooking the issue here. Firstly, when it comes to the EX, this is less customization, and I'm not really a fan of that. But you would expect that to be able to equip the 4 harms, you'd go up here and you'd have an option for 4 harms. But you don't. You just have an option for 2 harms. So how do you find? So where's the other 2? That's in the outer pylons. Up here. You can either take 2 harms and 4 AIM-120s, 2 harms and 4 AIM-9s, or 2 harms and 2 AIM-120s and 2 AIM-9s. If I'm going to be entirely honest, I'm not sure why they've done this. Because if you want to take this platform and make it as cheap as possible, that's still 420 points for an aircraft with 4 harms. I don't know, and even if you gave us the option of not having anything on the fuselage, that would be 385. Personally, I think the option of having the harms in the on this customization tab, for lack of a better term, is kind of weird. I think you should just have given us the option of mounting 4 of them in here. Although, hang on, that's 125. Where is the corresponding option? 70, 65, 60. So 60, 125. So that's what, 65 more points for the extra harms. And then these are 75, so an extra 65 to 75 would be... Well, no, it's an extra 65 would be 140 for 4 harms. But the fuselage change, like I said, I don't like because I don't have as many customization options. I find the configuration for the harms to be slightly weird. But the thing that they were saying about having good seed, I think they're missing the point. If you have a CJ, you can have this thing built for seed for 315 points. It has 4 harms. 2 AIM-120s. Or a Prowler. 240 points. 4 harms. These are very cheap. I think that's the point. I think that's what they're missing, is that these are very cheap. This thing is not cheap. The fact that I can throw out 2 Prowlers for almost the cost of one of these should be saying something, in all honesty. So, and besides, if you've kitted your F-15EX out like this, you can't kit it out in some other way, like a cruise missile platform. Although, I've seen people pair the 2 harms with the 3 JASSMs, so I'm kind of interested to see if people if people kit it out like this. Honestly, I kind of wish they gave this thing the option to carry harms on the pylons, or maybe even this thing as well, but I'm not sure if this thing can carry harms. The alternative would be, like, in place of the Mavericks, if you want something that's kind of interesting. Instead of giving us more harms per aircraft, I just kind of wish they gave us more aircraft that can carry harms. R-27ER and the AIM-7 Sparrow can now be guided 2 on the same target and are fired in quicker succession. The rate of fire of planes missiles depends on the quantity of identical missiles carried. I've seen people make posts about this in the Discord. To ripple fire a pair of R-27ERs/AIM-7s, you need to select a loadout with at least 4 of these missiles, otherwise the first missile will have reached the target by the time the second is fired. The SU-33 ESM upgrade price reduced slightly. This option was overpriced for 10% ESM because bonus on a rather cheap plane. SU-27 SM option to carry 4 ERs onto the fuselage added. This option to carry more ERs could be usable with the recent change to the missiles. The BMP-1 and the BMP-1 and the BRM-1K, the 73mm Grom gun, can now be fired on the move. This is kind of interesting to me because it says that the information that they could not find the move was not obvious, and many players sent them to their deaths with a single move order expecting a vehicle with a turret to be shooting on the move. This is going to be not uncontroversial opinion. It's going to be a very controversial opinion. But when the vehicle says over here, oh, it's called the BMP-2 Reserve. Okay. When the vehicle had a little thing over in the corner, like this, saying, can't shoot while moving. This might be a bit of a, like, in that case, it's not the vehicle's fault. It's the player's fault for not noticing it. It's not a very, very popular opinion, but that's what I think. And besides, the Grom gun couldn't fire on the move in reality because it wasn't stabilized. Maybe I'm reading into much. I'm reading into it too much, but The UR-77 price reduced slightly. The mine-clearing vehicles are very situational, and we don't expect them to be used very often, but this one was really underperforming compared to its American equivalents. To be fair, the UR-77, compared to its American equivalents, because what you have, compared to its American equivalents, you have it... You can compare it to the Miklik, which is on a more heavily armored platform, which actually is slightly faster. Granted, the UR-77 can be airdropped. The Miklik cannot. It has smoke, unlike the UR-77. Unless the UR-77 gets that in the upgrade package. No, it doesn't. And the UR-7, and it's tougher. It has smoke. It's more heavily armed, although I don't really think you want your shoot, what's the word I'm looking for? Your Miklik's getting shot at too much. And that was only 25 points more expensive. Sure, you can throw an armor package on there, which is like 35 points more expensive, but that just makes it even tougher and even more heavily armored. The other alternative was, well, the Assault Breacher. Which, yes, it only has 2 rockets, which I'd like to point out the AAVP had 3, if I hadn't already mentioned that. But it's an Assault Breacher. It's built on an Abrams chassis. And it's as tough as an Abrams chassis. So, yeah. The Meteorite did kind of need help. Air-to-ground anti-tank missiles, the Maverick, K-25, K-38, Vicar, launch margin angle reduced, and the missile seeker angle reduced. Launch margin angle is the angle in which the missile can be launched compared to the axis of the plane. The seeker angle is used to reacquire a new target if the original target is lost. As a result, these missiles will be fired at targets located closer to the indicated strafe area. Basically, they've reduced the field of view, from my understanding of the missile. They've reduced the field of view of the seeker. So instead of it herring off to go hit something that isn't close to the strafe area, the field of view is focused more on the strafe area. The F-35A availability reduced from 4 to 2. The bombing order is used instead of the precision strike to bypass the aim time of the precision strike. The availability has been reduced as a stopgap measure until we develop a way to prevent this technique. And Comanche is more easily spotted when firing Hellfire missiles. This helicopter has exceptional infiltration capabilities, and using it means choosing when and where to deliver the first strike. We want to keep it that way, as this is what makes it unique. However, we also want to ensure that once the first strike has been delivered, the helicopter is spotted, so that decision to attack is made more carefully. So here's the thing. And here's the big question I have about this. Firstly, stealth. The whole point of stealth is not to be spotted, or is not to not be spotted. The whole point of stealth is not to be spotted first. So the idea of, say, kitting this thing out with Hellfires isn't unsurprising. It isn't unsurprising necessarily. The question I have, and the one I really want to see answered when they talk about this, is how long does it take for the aircraft to go unspotted again? Because presumably, I'm assuming what happens is that when the missile's fired, the stealth basically degrades down to 1 or maybe 1.1 or like 1.25. I don't know. but presumably the stealth degrades whenever the missiles fire. How long does it take for the stealth value to go back up to 2.5 is what I want to know, because I think that information would be very, very useful. So that's the big question I have here. Aside from that, I'm not opposed to the change. I just want to know how long it would take the aircraft to become stealthy again, because that basically dictates how easy it would be to, say, dip behind a building or behind a tree line once you fire. We continue to closely monitor statistics. Your feedback and suggestions ensure that every improvement brings the most value to players. These changes have become possible thanks to your input and active involvement in the product's development. We sincerely thank the community for its support and contribution to the growth of the game. There are many more updates to come, and we will keep moving forward step by step, making the game better with each new milestone. And so that's basically the end of this. So, yeah, I think that's all pretty interesting, all things considered. Some changes I don't like this one, or the Patriot. Some changes I do, like where is it? Like this. And I kind of like these two. These are all okay. So overall, yeah, that's pretty interesting. And that's it for this video.